Good morning and welcome to this place as we gather together to remember Marjorie Melchor, affectionately known by her family and others as Mimi. Daughter and granddaughter, sister who was also like a mom, mother and aunt, grandmother, all of these things and more. But those titles do not begin to encompass all of who she is. What I have learned about Mimi in the past 2 weeks is that she is an eminently memorable person, a complex and incredibly smart woman. And most importantly, she understood that no matter what the ups and downs of life may bring, a loving heart, a helpful hand, and attentive focus can make it better. Today we celebrate her qualities, those that she had naturally and those that she nurtured throughout her life, and we celebrate the life she led. Today we celebrate her. Let us begin by gathering in a moment of quiet reflection and silence. As a culture, too often we come into a space like this with nervousness, but we are here to celebrate Mimi, and that will go better if we're all calmer and just remember her goodness. So I invite you to, in whatever way your cultures and faith traditions lead you to pray or meditate or reflect on the beauty of her life and the beauty of our lives. May the hopes and needs of our hearts and souls be met this day. May it be so. As a culture, and maybe just because we're human, I have found that we tend to avoid death because it is frightening to us. Endings are frightening. But in my career, which has been in death and dying, I feel that we give death way more credit than it's worth. We let death taunt us instead of inspire us. Mimi, I think, understood this because of her work. We all have one life, just one, and that can be scary. But there is so very much we can do with this one life we are given. So many paths, so many opportunities, so many people to connect with. In her work as a nurse, I believe Mimi excelled in this response to death, living life fully and fully reaching out to others. And I know that she would want me to say, and the family would like me to say, thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up in person or in streaming. They asked me to help with this service because they wanted a service that fully reflected who she was, because they felt that that would be the ultimate comfort. And I have to say, in our weeks of talking about her, I have been lifted up by some just not even out of the ordinary stories, except so many stories of times when things were made better, were made funnier, were made more reasonable, thanks to Mimi. She was not perfect, and nobody would have wanted her to be, and her imperfections were sometimes as charming as her gifts. So we made today happen by talking, by text, by phone, in person. We got together and we talked about Mimi. By being here today, by showing up today, you are stepping into that conversation. Welcome. We hope that you will also find it uplifting, therapeutic if needed, talking about someone we admire, we love, who will be missed as long as those who love her live. But everyone learns from it, from the talking, because love has a different shape for every person. They say that a brother and a sister, in this case a brother, a sister, and an uncle, are all raised by a different person. Because when love is real, it has a different shape for each person. And Mimi's love was above all real. Also, we learned from the talking that memory is pliant. There is a difference between a forgotten story and a story you all remember. And the difference is that you tell it to each other. We learned in our time together that our mistakes and flaws and foibles have a lot less weight when described in a spirit of love, that perfection isn't necessary, that any problems that made us fully human can be kind of forgotten in the bigger picture of all that has gone well, of all that turned out. And finally, it's a bittersweet joy to share stories. While we talked, there were times of quiet because the memories became so strong that it almost felt like Mimi was there. There were tears and there was a lot of laughter. There were memories of lean times and wonderful times. And most importantly, there were stories that were 100% Mimi. And so that is what we want to share with you today, and that we certainly hope you will share in the gathering afterwards to hear some of the stories and to share some of the stories of her life. Every time someone who loves a person tells their story, that person comes back to life. And so we will begin with Terry, who's going to share some words about his sister.
I have props. So Margie is how I always knew her, now Mimi. Marjorie Carol Poole Melchor's Circle of Life began on March 10th, 1945 in Portsmouth, Virginia during World War II. As Elaine said, she was a grandmother, a mother, a sister, a daughter. She was also a partner, a friend, a nurse, and a family historian. She modeled herself after her own mother, and for most of her life, she was a caregiver to others. This story that's I'm going to tell today has been put together by all of her close relatives. So she had a fun childhood with a sister, Joan, who was 3 years younger, and later a brother, me, Terry, 14 years younger. Oops. Surprisingly, until high school, Margie was very tall for her age. I mean, that's kind of hard to wrap your head around. She enjoyed playing with the neighborhood kids and her cousins from North Carolina and visiting the family farm in Brookneal, Virginia. This is where she was Aunt Frances's favorite. A little known fact is that Margie never learned how to swim. You know, in the 50s, this country was in its heyday in the post-World War II boom, and every day was full of possibilities. Nobody knew what they couldn't do. At Craddock High School, it was new and fresh and teeming with energy. She was a good student. She enjoyed the social life of dressing up for school spirit events and dances, especially fancy prom gowns. In her senior year class of 1961, her bio recorded that she was in several clubs. Tri-High Y is the point chairman and the float chairman. Many of you will remember the floats that were made with tissue paper and bobby pins to make Kleenex flowers. There must have been at one point 1,000 of those in our house. She was also the treasurer of the Diversified Occupations Club, which I guess that's a catch-all for if you don't know what you're going to do. Treasurer of the National Honor Society, Secretary of Homeroom, and Model General Assembly representative. During that time, she was featured in a float in downtown Portsmouth for the Thanksgiving Day Parade. And she was also a contestant for Miss Zero Defects at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. And as Nyoka would tell us, her friend Nyoka would tell us that she had a bit of a naughty side. So after high school, she went to nursing school at Portsmouth General Hospital, which included some courses at then Old Dominion College, and she became a registered nurse. She also dated her future husband, Wayne. I actually remember riding with my mother when I was 4 years old to pick up Margie from nursing school on Friday afternoon so she could come home and get a good meal, get her laundry done, go out on a date. So I remember picking her up and 4 years old, standing on the bench seat like this, and the only seatbelt was my mom's arm like that. Soon after that, she married Wayne, and our parents had to sign for it because she was only 20 years old at the time. They honeymooned in the Outer Banks, and that remained her favorite vacation spot with her family. Within a year, she gave birth to Rick. And Rick, I did the math, buddy. You're legit. She admitted that she failed her first nursing board exam because she was sick as a dog while pregnant. And at that time, you could never say pregnant. She always said PG. Margie and Wayne bought their first house on B Street at Shea Terrace in Portsmouth. She worked nights and weekends as a nurse in medical surgery in the post-anesthesia care unit, while her in-laws, Nellie and Dick Melchor, took care of Rick. They later moved to a new house in Green Lakes in Portsmouth, and Amy was born. And obviously, Amy got the bigger bedroom. Margie became a full-time mom. She sent the kids to Craddock Baptist Kindergarten, and later sent Rick to Court Street Baptist Church, first grade. Then they moved into Margie's bigger dream home on the creek in Green Lakes, and she designed that herself. She enjoyed being a wife and mother and could sew and made a lot of her and her kids' clothes. She did needlepoint, she made beaded jewelry, and also crocheted. Our favorite picture, or our favorite piece of clothing, was Rick's Afghan Squares crocheted vest. Now, I couldn't find the actual picture of the crocheted vest, or the Afghan Squares, but I do have pictures of a crocheted vest. And if you'll notice in the background, Margie is in a crocheted cape. I'm going to pass these around. Give them back because these are important, valuable family blackmail tools. She also dabbled in astrology as a fun hobby. Sometime after that, she determined that her life would be better outside of the marriage, and she moved with her children to Raleigh Place in Chesapeake. Her key decision point there was the excellent quality of the schools for her children. She took classes and the exam to become a realtor and later a broker, and sold homes for a period of time. She even flipped a few homes decades before it was ever an activity that was featured on HGTV. When it became necessary to increase her income, she went back to work as a nurse again on nights and weekends in pediatrics. She taught Rick and Amy how to cook so they could start soups and stews and roasts before she came home. She still managed to juggle and support Rick and Amy's interests. As a nurse, she was old school. She ironed her starched cotton uniform every day, wore a nursing cap, and wore white stockings. She worked as a charge nurse at Portsmouth General and later Maryview, which is now Bon Secours, with her friend Vicki Farrell. When work became so physically taxing, she again took educational classes to become a certified oncology nurse and worked for Dr. James Stark's practice as head nurse. There she wrote orders, mixed chemicals, and administered chemotherapy to many, many people to help extend their lives. In her role as a caregiver, she helped take care of her father and mother and later her partner Billy, but always had time and room to take family members in when they visited. In many ways, she was like a second mother to me. I can remember that ever since I was a child, she still always treated me like an adult. She remained friends with her sister Joan. They took furniture upholstery classes together, and they did several projects. Margie also had some hidden talents. Since both of her parents grew up on farms, she was exposed to rural as well as urban life. She knew how to milk a cow. She also knew that the term fencing did not mean the disposal of stolen goods, but how you would mend fixes to keep the cows in using a post hole digger, we know how to do that, and a barbed wire stretcher to repair the fences. She learned to drive a car with a stick shift on the column on the country roads when she was 12, sitting on our father's lap. But mostly she enjoyed being at home in Portsmouth and Chesapeake. In fact, the only time she was ever out of the country was to visit her friends Nyoka and Howard when they were in London. And they also took her on the Eurostar through the Channel to France so that she could see Paris. Nyoka and Margie grew up. They've known each other since middle school, and they've remained lifelong friends. Nyoka, Margie was always impressed with your travels, but she loved you just because. And Howard, she was just as fond of you. While raising her children and working, Margie had a couple of long-term relationships, but the love of her life was Lieutenant William Redmond Billy. She loved to dance with him. He'd place his hand on the small of her back, she'd put her hand on his shoulder, and they would just glide around the dance floor with one arm dangling. So when he would swing her around, her arm would sway back and forth. She thought she was just too cool for school. She had a signature move now. So she would be like that, arm dangling, kick her leg back, and while she was doing that, she would look back just to make sure somebody could see her doing this. And then when she was satisfied with that, she'd give him the big Margie satisfied grin, and then snap her head back, and then they go off to another part of the dance floor, arms still dangling. She thought she had died and gone to heaven. The other love of her life was her dog Sammy, who was her constant companion. Their quality time, however, was on the recliner. While Margie raised Ricky and Amy, she instilled in them many values. They became strong, loving individuals who themselves raised fine families. Rick and Amy are very close. They've lived through diversity, but they learned from Margie that you don't quit, you just keep moving. She was generous with her time, money, and heart, and she expected the same in return. She taught them strong morals about what is right and wrong and how you treat others. She frequently told me how proud she was of you. She loved you both very, very much. That said, Margie could be challenging at times. She was headstrong, and when she wanted something, she wanted it now, regardless of whether somebody else had time commitments. Amy remembers well the call that she received when Margie said, "I bought a dog, and you have to get a truck and come help me pick up Sammy and the big crate that comes with him." She also loved chaos and clutter. Now, the clutter was mostly a result of shopping sprees at BJ's Wholesale Club. It was there that she discovered Gloria Vanderbilt jeans. She had a collection of over 30 pair. And we have to refer to this area, this time frame, as her unfortunate bedazzled era. Margie wasn't always wasn't always discreet. In fact, she was often called, behind her back, MBS, the Margie Broadcast System. It's because she was apt to overshare sometimes, but I'll tell you, probably she was the most loyal person I know, and always accepting of others for who they were. Sometimes she would dive into a situation to help, and she did it heart first instead of head first. So you could get mad at Margie, but you couldn't stay mad. Margie retired, and her health gradually started to decline. At some point, she required additional home care and was fortunate enough to have Geraldine Glivens for many years as her caregiver and dear friend. When Margie's health declined to the point that she needed more assistance with care, she was first at Churchland House in Portsmouth. Margie and Sammy both survived multiple health scares, and it seemed to all of us like they were both the proverbial cats that had 9 lives. Clearly, the standout feature of Margie's personality was the will to live. During all that time and prior to that, Amy was her constant go-to person. When able to, Margie enjoyed school events for her kids, birthday parties, and softball games that they played in, both Claire and Natalie. They were coached by their father, Chris. She always bragged about you. She eventually moved to Harmony House in Mechanicsville to be near to her son, Rick, and daughter-in-law, Courtney, and they became supervisors for her care. She got to see her other granddaughters, Morgan and Marin, frequently at Harmony House or high school plays and events. She loved to brag about you also. Margie had excellent care there by the staff, in large part because either Rick or Courtney or Morgan or Marin were there every day. She would often say what a wonderful daughter-in-law she had in Courtney, who was like a mother to her, like a daughter to her. It was during this time, though, that Margie's naughty side reemerged. I'll attribute that to her granddaughters, who taught her to use certain hand signals when she was signing off of a Facebook. I won't go there. Margie was able to make several friends at Harmony House, even after her speech became labored. Her friend there, Carol, told us that Mimi was a special person, and then she always talked about her family. Margie was actually our family historian. He even put together a family tree so we would all know our history. But her world was pretty small to her. Portsmouth was always home, and for our family up until the end, she always knew what each child, grandchild, niece, and nephew was doing. People came to tell her what was going on. It was like coming home to Margie. It took me a long time to understand, but when we were helping to clean out some of her accumulated clutter in her house over the course of years, and we had to do this many times because of the trips to BJ's, and because she had a large collection of inherited family pieces. And I would always ask her why she needed something, because I was trying to get rid of it. And she would never answer the question directly. But what she would do is tell me exactly where it came from and who in the family had it and what they did with it. because to her it was all about family. She knew the value of the connections of who we were and where we came from. Marjorie's treasured legacy is her family, her son and daughter-in-law, 4 unique, smart, charming granddaughters, and an aging dog. I think you can all take comfort in the fact that Marjorie's circle of life ended peacefully and gracefully on July 18th, with her children by her side. She was not alone. She chose to let nature take its course in its last days. It's said that the last sense to go is hearing. And so her children and grandchildren were around her. They read her life story. They told stories. They sang to her while she was in her twilight. They played music. They read to her, including a book that was a gift to her on her 10th birthday, Little Women. In Craddock's senior yearbook, it's tradition to include a quote that fits you. Hers was, "The great end of life, not knowledge, but action." And of course, in this case, end of life meant the purpose of life. She was clearly a strong woman of action. But Margie's life has ended. She has now died and gone to heaven, and she's dancing with Billy again.
If you're at all like me, you're wondering, what on earth can she say after that? Beautifully done. And what an honor. What an honor to your sister, mother figure, to be able to, in light of your grief, put that together. Beautiful. What I have to share with you, and he did bring me to tears, is in hearing all these stories and being a medical professional myself, what impressed me about Margie and Mimi, because they're kind of two people, but they're also one person, is the nursing connection. And while nursing is a job, it is a career, it is a role that some people put on and take off again, the best nurses, and I think Margie and Mimi, as she was one of the best nurses. They are the ones who show that nursing is what was already in you and how you can take care of strangers using what's already in you. How you can make the world better just by the gifts you've been given. I think it would be a wonderful thing if all of us could see what the nurse in us is in order to help others. My mom had an expression. She also worked with nurses, and she would pick up the phone when there was a crisis, and she would say, the person would answer, and she'd say, "Hey, nursey." And it would be like 6 different people she would call with this, but she'd say, "Hey, nursey," and that was the intro to, "It's all on fire, I need help." And so when I think about Mimi as a nurse, as a superb nurse, I think about all the different ways she would answer that call. The call for, I need love, I need support, I need something that's on fire to stop being on fire, I need someone to listen, I need dance lessons. So when I think about her as a nurse, I think about her skills, her temperament, her abundant love, and how she was born to be a nurse, but she didn't feel that way at first. She initially had a sense of resentment, according to her family, at the lack of choices she was given. She wanted to go to college. Her mother had been a nurse. It was kind of said, you're going to be a nurse. And she thought she wanted more, not realizing that she was the more. And so as she aged, she made the more happen. Also, because she wasn't given a freedom that she wanted, she gave those choices and that support to her children and ultimately her grandchildren as they pursued higher education and their own career interests. Some of the things I have learned about nurses over the years, Mimi just had. Nurses take charge. When it was needed, when there needed to be someone to lead the Cub Scouts, and it was thought at that time in our history that that should be a man, and a man did not step forward, Mimi took over and helped Rick and his Cub Scouts crew. When a leader was needed and support was needed for Amy and Job's daughters, Mimi stepped up. In career, becoming a charge nurse, becoming the head nurse, that requires a take charge attitude and a willingness to deal with problems. Being a nurse, you'd have problems anyway, but to deal with additional problems. And then her grandchildren told me that take charge attitude could be kind of scary when you were a little kid, but that Mimi mellowed with age and with some lessons from her granddaughters. She was able to be a little less take charge sometimes, a little more have fun. Nurses understand the power of teams, and this came out, as Terry mentioned, in how she raised Rick and Amy, that they aren't just brother and sister, they aren't just roommates in a house, they are part of the family team. And they were taught to care for themselves, to care for each other, to make sure everyone was fed. They were taught collaboration and how to get the groceries. And Amy was even given access to the checking account, of which I still have some jealousy. Nurses know what they're doing, and they know how to learn when they don't know how to do something. Courtney described her as an autodidact between the upholstery classes and the wallpapering and the feng shui of the architecture and budgeting and anything she wanted to learn. In the days before Google, there were books, there were classes, and she would find out how to do them. She also would know when you had a fever or needed a snack, or when you were PG and you hadn't bothered to tell her yet. She knew that. Because nurses pay attention, and that is a beautiful gift. They know you. And I think about how Margie must have been as a nurse because of how her family describes me as a person who now, I was recently with my father for a few days in the hospital, and there was a note on the little board where they put all the goals for the day. There was a note, ask about his hobbies, right? Like the nurse had to be told to ask about who the patient was as a person. Amy tells me about times she thinks about her mother when she sees other nurses in action, and she can tell the ones that are like her mom, who didn't have to have a note on the board to say, find out who this person was. She paid attention by becoming the queen of girl cinema and making a wonderful collection of movies for her granddaughters. She paid attention in gift giving and thoughtfulness. I would like to say on her behalf that, BJ's is a very quality place to go if you like to give gifts. You can find a lot of variety, Terry. Nurses, unfortunately, also cheat themselves in order to save others, in order to help others. They don't always take the best care of themselves. They go without. They hurt their backs. They eat an astonishing assortment of junk food. I was pleased to hear about Pop-Tarts and Cheetos, and what's the third one? Pepsi, of course. Pepsi, which then had to be restricted because of how it was from dawn till bedtime Pepsi, but not restricted completely because nurses do know some moderation. Nurses prepare, and I think this is a wonderful thing about those vacations that were taken, the times together with Terry's family, the beach times, Rick's college pharmacy, and everything packed perfectly in his trunk to meet all the needs he would have in VCU's Rhodes Hall. Nurses prepare for the best sleepovers. Nurses prepare for the food to be delivered when the babies are born. Nurses prepare to be there for you when you need them. That's why my mom could pick up a phone and say, "Hey, nursey," and immediately get an answer. And my guess is that when she picked up the phone to say, "Hey, Amy, we need to go get Sammy," she was giving you the compliment of you being her "Hey, nursey." And that is a true compliment because nurses need cajoling to ask for help. Everyone in the family, as I talked to different people or we texted, I discovered that they all gave credit to certain people for being the ones who stepped up and answered the phone when Margie called and said, "Hey, nursey." First of all, Papa, also known as Billy, what a gift that relationship was. What a happy time in both of their lives. He was a man of action. She was a woman of action. I imagine that there was an occasional butting of heads. I would be interested to see how those first few dances, before they figured out who was leading, worked out. Geraldine, what a gift that friendship, collaboration, and helpfulness was. Amy and Rick in their caring for their mom and being there for her. And of course, Sammy. We cannot judge the love of a human and a canine together because they have their own language. But Sammy showed up. Sammy was there to help. The other thing I would like to say on the clutter issue on behalf of her is something that I did notice when I went to her apartment at Harmony. Amy had kind of a perplexed question about why she never put up these pictures of a wonderful trip that she just loved. And she had all the pictures, but she didn't put them up. And I looked around her apartment, and I looked at her boxes of photos, and I said, there weren't enough faces in those pictures. She was a woman who loved a face. If she loved you, she wanted to see your face in her house. She wanted to walk past it in the morning. She wanted to see it as the last thing before she went to bed. She had a home full of the faces of love. And that meant that she cared about each one of you as you are, with your flaws and foibles, with your gifts and wonderful talents. I was incredibly touched, as Rick was, to find out that when she got in the car, her favorite CD was not actually Elton John. It was Rick Melchor. She loved her son's songwriting. She loved his talent, and it was just a joy and a comfort for her to hear that. Nurses like an adventure. Again, what a gift grandchildren have been. What a gift, Terry, you have been and your family for those trips to the beach. And what a gift it is to be able to learn your entire life long. Even when she became more dependent on others, she was learning what it was like to be nursed instead of to nurse someone else. The most important thing to remember, though, is that nurses are never, ever done. They're never really clocked out. The love, the lessons, the care, it does not die. Her will to live, her survival, her generosity, it does not die. And her thinking that her family was the absolute best does not die. As long as you live, I hope that all of you know that you were someone's favorite person in the world. We're going to close. Scott, who is Rick's lifelong best friend and former and future Rick musical partner, Scott and I have already worked that out on behalf of your mother. He is going...
His mother, too.
Yes, is going to play some music for us. I do want to say Scott and I were connecting, and I remembered the story. Talk about nurses never clock out. Scott had a wonderful, beautiful wedding, and they had taken, Margie had taken the train, and they were coming back on the train, and the call went out, is there a nurse or a doctor on board the train? Amy said she had just gotten the pillow just right for the train nap. They'd all settled down, and here they go, all headed up to the front car for her to help out someone in need. So, and then after they were done, she went back and took her nap. Scott, it is so wonderful that you and your mom are here, as you are part of the family, and that you close this service with this perfect song.
I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's warm outside, I've got the month of May. Well, I guess you said what can make me feel this way. My girl, my girl, my girl, talking about my girl, my girl. I've got so much honey, the bees envy me. I got a sweet song to the birds in the trees. Well, I guess you say what can make me feel this way. My girl, my girl, my girl, talking about my girl, my girl. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, 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 hey. Ooh, yeah. I don't need no money. girl. I even got the month of May with my girl. Talking about my girl. My girl.
This concludes our service, but not our celebration of Margie and her family. We invite you to the luncheon, as you will have a chance to share more memories. And again, thank you so much for being here to honor her life today and to honor her family. May you go in peace.
For your mother,